Hello everyone, my name is JD,
And this is Logan.
and this is the WireTap. Now, as we explained in last video, we're moving away from the podcast style here on the Conservative Wire, and we're moving toward shorter, more digestible videos for you to watch, something that's a little easier than having to sit through an hour of video or audio. There's going to be changes coming to what platforms we're on. We'll have more on that, and we'll give you that information as it comes out and as we make decisions. YouTube is pretty safe. It's here to stay. That is, unless we're kicked off or demonetized or, I don't know, whatever else, our channel's deleted for whatever reason. But YouTube we plan to definitely keep up with. It's just the audio side that we are examining our options as to how we're going to continue uploading content. So that kind of falls into what I want to talk about today, and this is a lot more of a free-form video than what we normally do. We normally kind of have a bit of stories that outline what we're going to be talking about, and we bounce off those stories. This is going to be a lot more free-form and just a lot more of just discussion between us, and we encourage discussion from you in comments and everything. This is a story from the New York Times, and it just serves as a springboard here, but this is from, let me see if I can find it. This is from, earlier this month. It was last Sunday. So we were on vacation, and this was on the day, July 14th. So this was that Sunday of our week vacation that we took last week. And it says, "Fighting Big Tech makes for some uncomfortable bedfellows." That's the title. And it talks about how conservatives and liberals are joining forces to try to call for regulation on Facebook and Google and these big tech giants. And this is something that we have discussed before. I don't know if I can't remember if we've discussed it on a podcast that we posted or if it was one of our deleted files. But we've talked before about censorship on companies like YouTube and on Facebook and all that kind of stuff, and how these companies, if they're censored, it's effectively going to kill any competition that they have. Because these companies are calling for regulations on themselves, which doesn't make any sense. It doesn't make any sense that they're telling the government, "Oh, please, just regulate us." Doesn't that send a red flag to anyone? But what we're seeing, there's a lot of turmoil surrounding YouTube right now, not just politically, but as a general whole in terms of its policies and its rules and what it has been doing to content creators politically. Most notably and most recently, Steven Crowder had a bunch of problems with his YouTube channel and being demonetized, and just a blanket demonetization on his whole YouTube operation. Just a blanket demonetization because of Carlos Maza, the gay wonk, who complained about rebuttal videos from Steven Crowder and, claimed that he made a bunch of slurs and yada, yada, yada. And essentially, YouTube decided to just blanket demonetize Steven Crowder because YouTube came back to Maza and essentially said there's really nothing here that we can do, or there's really no violations of our guidelines. But he whined and complained some more, so they decided, okay, we're going to strip all money from Steven Crowder's channel. And that's just going to have to be the best that we can do. Because Steven Crowder's comments are hurtful to the greater community. They didn't violate their guidelines, but YouTube's subjective opinion of what's hurtful to the community is also grounds for demonetization, I guess.
But you're going to see this. You've seen it through all big tech platforms, and you're going to continue to see it through all big tech platforms.
Yeah. And you've had Candace Owens, the conservative black activist who had her account suspended from Facebook. You told her it was going to be for 7 days, but it came back. I'm not sure how quickly. It wasn't 7 days. It was less than a day, I think, because she responded to Facebook and posted about it on her Twitter and everything, and caused a ruckus, and Facebook reinstated her account. But this is something that there's so many articles about how, well, especially in the wake of the Trump social media conference, which I think happened while we were on vacation too.
Yeah.
Which we missed being able to talk about that in any kind of currency, but in the wake of all that, you had a bunch of articles, which is expected, that are just articles for the sake of disagreeing with Trump's premise that social media and big tech like this are against conservatives. So there were a bunch of articles attacking that premise, and that, well, that's not true. Social media isn't biased against conservatives. And I'm not really sure how empirically you prove this, but there's just a lot of examples of conservatives that aren't treated quite the same as liberals. You want to make the claim that they're violating your guidelines, these conservatives are violating your guidelines, then fine. But you can't expect me to believe that there are no liberals violating those guidelines that are as prominent. Yeah. Look at Twitter. Okay? Twitter, I don't know how true this exactly is, but I could believe it. That, the vast majority, at least, of people on Twitter are liberal. Now, in terms of percentages, that's kind of where it gets gray. I saw something that said it was like 70 to 80%. 80 seems pretty high to me. I'd be willing to believe approximately 70% of people on Twitter are liberal. I'd be willing to believe that. Again, I don't know those exact numbers. I didn't look to see if I could find any exacts.
Something that does more is that they're more prominent.
Yeah, but even so, the fact is that the majority of people on Twitter are liberal. How is it that you have so many conservatives that are crossing the line, and they're notable. They're notable figures in the conservative movement. These are notable conservatives that are crossing the line and violating your terms of agreement and your community guidelines and everything. And how none of these liberals are violating those same terms. None of them. None of them are getting struck with these suspensions or these bans or anything. It's just not possible, Such a small fraction of your Twitter community or of your YouTube community. I know even less about YouTube, what the distribution is of conservatives and liberals in terms of political channels and content and everything. I'm not sure about that. But you can't tell me that such a large swath of audience and content creators do not have some in there that are also violating your terms of agreement and community guidelines in the same way that these people on the right are. Well, it's just take yourself down from the high horse for the moment and just think through it. It's just not logical, because you can say, oh, well, they obviously are. They're obviously being pretty crazy. They're obviously saying a lot of things that are dangerous or not true. deconstruct the straw man that you might have of the other side for the moment. Look at this. You can disagree with people as vehemently as you can. There's a lot of people I do on YouTube and the political, realm. Look at Vox, just an easy example, or the Young Turks or whatever. You can disagree with them vehemently, but they're not doing or saying anything that I think violates terms of agreement. I might think it's gross, depending on what the topic is. I might think it's kind of disgusting what they're saying or what they're doing. But does it violate terms of agreement? No. Does it violate community guidelines? No. If Steven Crowder over here is doing that, then this channel should totally have the same thing happen to it. They should have blanket demonetization. None of their videos should be monetized if he doesn't. You have to have consistency in this instance. You have to. And that's what you're not having. You're not seeing consistency.
Well, the one thing that can be done here, and so many topics have been brought up about putting regulations on these companies. The one thing that you can do to change all that is make them choose. Are you a public platform to where everybody gets the chance to put whatever they want on there? Or are you a publisher to where you edit what is put onto your platform?
And at that time, whenever you become a publisher, you become liable and you can be subject to lawsuits in ways that platforms are not. If you're a platform and you're just a platform for free speech, content that might be considered hateful or whatever, any of those kind of things, you can't be sued for. Because you're just a platform. You're just a holding facility, essentially, for people's speech. You have to go after the individual user at that point. You can't go after the platform at large. But if you're a publisher, that publisher can be held accountable for what is on their platform.
And right now you have Twitter, Facebook, Google, everyone, YouTube, that are somehow making a mix of those two.
Yeah. They're somehow riding that line, and I think it's very clear that they are on the publisher side. They need to have their legal protections removed that they have right now as platforms, because that's technically what they are legally, as platforms. They need to have that removed because they're no longer a platform. And I think that the big three that you're looking at is Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube. Is pretty well the big three to focus on, at least at this time. And just YouTube in particular, because that's, where all of our content is going to be able to be found. And as for audio, again, I'm not sure. We're kind of deliberating as to what to do with audio. But in terms of video, it's all on YouTube. We're content creators. We don't have hundreds of hours of content or anything up on YouTube. We don't have a whole audience behind us or anything, but we are content creators, and what happens on YouTube does affect us as well as content creators. It affects anyone who posts videos on YouTube. Anyone who wants to do that kind of stuff. And this is something that affects us directly as well. And us being particularly vulnerable, I tell you what, we started this channel at probably the worst possible time that we could have, because it was right after Steven Crowder had gotten his channel back, but it was under the blanket it still is. It always will be, I guess, until maybe something changes. But it was right after YouTube decided to give him blanket demonetization, and then we were like, hey, let's start a YouTube channel talking about conservative politics. So that's what we did. But it's just deconstruct. If you disagree with our assessment, just stop for a moment and honestly, earnestly think about it. Even though that you might vehemently disagree with people like Steven Crowder or Candace Owens or Charlie Kirk or just pick a conservative voice, Sean Hannity, I don't care. Bill O'Reilly. What they're saying does not violate community guidelines or terms of agreement. You might think it's wildly inaccurate. You might think that it's so ungodly wrong and false, but it doesn't violate terms of agreement or community guidelines. These people do not advocate violence. They don't advocate racism and hatred. If you honestly, earnestly look at what they're saying, they don't. No more than I think that YouTube channels for the left do the same thing. I mean, in any real capacity, do they actually advocate violence? Unless they say it. I mean, I'm sure that there's some who actually do. And I'm sure that there's some on the right that actually do. And those are far removed from anything that conservatives really actually believe. Mainstream the majority of conservatives actually believe. As I'm sure on the left that is far removed from what actual liberals believe and what most liberals believe. But this is something that affects all of us, this tech discussion. Because this touches basically all Americans' lives. And what they do with Facebook, what they do with Google, what they do with YouTube, and just go down the list, Twitter, of all your social medias. It's going to affect all of our lives. It's going to affect all of us. And I just hope that this does not go down the regulatory road. Because if you do, it kills any and all competition virtually. It will be very difficult to have any sort of competitor, pardon me, with YouTube or Facebook or Google or any of those tech companies. It will be very difficult. It will be. I mean, it's like what happened or what would have happened with net neutrality. It would become very hard for companies, to rise up in competition whenever you have these rules. Whenever you have those rules with ISPs and everything. But it's just not logical, and you see these examples of this happening. You see this going on, and there's a lot of people on Twitter who always claim, well, I was banned by Twitter, I was shadow banned by Twitter and everything. And I don't know how much truth those claims have. I'm not really the one to judge, and quite frankly, I don't care. But you do know, at least, let's just take these instances. Now, where are the well-known liberals who have had this happen to them as well for making similar remarks? Where are they making similar remarks? Why have they not had the same thing happen to them? Why does it seem like it's only the right? And I mean, I'm earnestly asking, why is it that this only seems to happen to the right?
It's not like they don't say these things.
I mean, it's not like that they don't toe the line.
Yeah.
Like the right does. The left, I mean, if you are on the left, I mean, let's be honest. Both sides will toe the line at times, because that is how you gain attention, and that is how you make your point clear unequivocally. That's how you gain an audience and gain attention for what you're saying. Sometimes you have to toe the line. But by and large, I don't think that the left crosses the line, but I also do not think that the right crosses the line, because it's representing viewpoints that are present in mainstream America. These aren't radical viewpoints. I mean, of course, I think that YouTube should have full ability to censor content that promotes violence and promotes true hatred, I guess you could say. I don't know. It was like truly hateful content that, and honestly, I think that falls under the category of violence. I mean, basically just violence and threats, I think, are your baseline for removing content or having content removed on Facebook or on YouTube or whatever, Twitter. Content that advocates violence, I think, should be removed. Threats of violence or anything should be removed. Because chances are, true hate content, truly hateful content, like, I don't know, white supremacist or, racist content just in general, will most likely have these threats of violence anyway. But I don't want to quite go so far to say racist content, because, then that's kind of why we've landed where we are today. Because it's like, well, what's racist? It's kind of subjective. I think if you really just want to start baseline, content that advocates violence
and that's
against individuals, and like an individual or a group of people, that should kind of be your baseline.
And that subjective view of racism is why you see so many things come out from the right as these over-the-line statements.
I'll be honest. I think that racist content or content from racist groups of people racist against people of any religion, or like anti-Semitic kind of stuff, or people of other races is what I mean. I think that should be allowed if you're going to be a free speech platform, as long as it does not cross the line of advocating violence. Vehemently disagree with it. There's no way that I agree with that. But, it should at least be there. I think if you're going to have a true free speech platform, well, you at least have that there, as long as it does not advocate violence or anything like that against a person or a group of people.
The reason why you're seeing all of this is because the media don't display a story. They display a narrative, and the narrative that they want to produce.
Yeah.
And the narrative right now is that Donald Trump and all of the right are racists.
Yeah.
So that's why you see every single statement being perverted and twisted, and you're seeing that on YouTube and all of these other places. So now you're seeing YouTube as a social justice warrior watching over the web, demonetizing and taking down hateful content.
Yeah. And I know that we're kind of rambling here, but the original point that I wanted to make was that conservatives need to be very wary of jumping on the bandwagon of regulating these big tech companies. They need to be very wary of jumping on that bandwagon, because it will not work the way that you think that it will. It will not work. It will not. The only way to defeat the censorship that occurs is to promote more competition and come up with alternatives to these companies. Now, I know that there's an app called Parler that a lot of people have looked at as an alternative. I've never really looked at it too seriously. I don't know anything about it. But that's just an example that I'm using here of, if you allow more competition, there will be other apps and services and sites that will come up that will be better, because there will be a large market demand for something like this if it can fill it. That's what you have to hope for, not the government stepping in and regulating it. Be very wary of people advocating for regulation and conservatives advocating for regulation. I know Josh Hawley, our senator here in the great state of Missouri, has been on the front of this big tech stuff. Quite honestly, I've not really paid too much attention to what it is that he's proposed. We'll address that later in probably our next episode, just to touch base on it, as to what exactly Josh Hawley has proposed to do. Because I know a couple of other senators have kind of jumped on and supported some of his actions and some of his legislation that he's putting forward and gaining a little momentum. And this was ahead of the social media conference that Donald Trump had, so it was probably about 3 weeks ago, I think, that this started coming out and that he put together legislation. But again, I'm sorry. This was kind of a rambling video, but it was just kind of vent about what's going on right now with tech and technology and our platforms and free speech on these platforms. And this will not be the last time that we talk about something like this, I'm sure. But I want to thank you guys so much for watching this. Hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, leave us comments on stuff that you want to see in future videos. What are your thoughts on this topic? Interact with us. You can follow us on Twitter. It's at the CWire, capital TCNW, at the CWire. As of right now, we still have SoundCloud, but there will be changes to that coming up here in the near future. And for Logan and myself, I am JD, and this has been the WireTap. We will see you guys in our next video.